Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Such an exciting topic for today. Okay, I think everybody's hopped in. Okay, so our topic for today is healthy conflict resolution. So who on this call loves conflict resolution in general? No hands? Who feels like they're really good at it? Nobody? Okay, so it sounds like it's a topic we can all learn from today. So Aaliyah, who's going to be joining us, who's not here, is the one who actually came up with this topic. And how she came up with it was she was actually struggling with an agent on the other side of a transaction. And she was like, this is my struggle currently, is this conflict with this other agent. So I'm sure you've all felt that along the way. How have people dealt with that?
Sometimes you just kind of have to, I feel like we've sometimes had some healthy conflicts with our own agents, and trying one-on-one sometimes is helpful to just kind of be like, hey, sorry, but when I don't get any answers from you, it's just really hard to move forward. And a lot of times that kind of nips it in the bud. They're like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And then other times you just kind of need to have a mediary, someone who they work with more, to kind of just help out.
I would say too, because I know we've had some, or I've had some dealings with some kind of very difficult agents, and sometimes it's not easy, but I have to take the high road. I don't want to, but you know, I'm not a real confrontational person to begin with, but I've over 10 years of this job, I've gotten very thick-skinned. So don't have a problem pushing back. I just have to check myself sometimes because it doesn't always help the situation to push back too much.
Yeah, you're very right. There's a balance to it, right? Of actually dealing with the conflict in a healthy manner versus getting steamrolled over and really creating that that balance there.
Yeah, it doesn't help when you get into a shouting match over email.
Per my last email.
In all caps.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know one thing we try to really focus on is just get to solution and like present the facts and just, you know, hey, here's your options. You know, you can do A, B, or C. This is what it is. And like take the emotion completely out of it. It's very hard to do sometimes, but then, you know, here's the facts. Here's what's going on. You know, this is, what do you want to do? Mr. Buyer, Mr. Seller, or co-op agent. So try to get the emotion out, keep everybody from not snowballing, you know, down the hill and blowing the deal, but just, yeah, get to solution is kind of one of our mottos for our team.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hannah. Sometimes we can get caught up in the problem, which just escalates everything.
Or in the difference in personalities and letting that get in the way of actually getting to a resolution in the end.
Hang on just a second. No, you're good.
So Hannah, what I love about what you just said is that you address it with keeping your emotion between the lines, right? And you provided options, and then you set a very realistic expectation of here's what I need you to do about it. So you actually did a very good step with that. And I feel a lot of times when conflict arises, it's because there's some sort of confusion there on either side of those, you know, of the, I guess, the whole issue that happened. So setting expectations up front will typically eliminate most conflict in the business.
This makes me think of,
And just over communication, you know, that's another thing, expectations, and then just, yeah, make sure reiterate, I cannot say that word. But just keep, you know, communication. Yeah. Reiterate.
I always think about like Starbucks, how they train their employees and they say to use the latte method. So I always remember that. So I listen, acknowledge the problem, take action, thank them, even though it's not always your fault, just say thank you, and then explain what happened afterwards. That's what's gotten me through it. So I don't know. It always stuck with me.
I love that.
Yeah, I'd never heard of that. That one's good, Joe.
Wow. Can you type that into the chat so that we can all take
Sure.
that little nugget away? That's
Sure.
a really great one to bring to your team.
Okay.
So what I'm hearing on, thank you for that. What I'm hearing on here is that we have a lot of different pieces to the puzzle. And I think each one of you have kind of brought up a different scenario of people in the transaction that you've had like some sort of conflict with, whether it's the agent on the other side, someone in your own team, the buyers, the sellers. How do you guys handle it, or do you handle it differently if it's somebody on your team versus like an external party? Or does anyone have an issue with that? No, everyone has perfect teams. Okay, wonderful. I love it.
I mean, we've had this come up, when we've had tension between something not getting done years ago. Honestly, it was a lot through early 2020 when COVID hit, with how we've had to change communication styles from being in person and being around each other all day and then not. I remember when that transition, just the communication and having to readjust. And then our culture is very key on our team, and we're 7 girls. Yeah, 7 girls. And we just over communicate. We don't talk about anybody behind their backs. We pretty kind of have an open table, open forum about anything. If there's something that kind of dropped the ball, hey, let's add this into the checklist for the next transaction.
I think also we approach everything with a growth mindset.
Yeah.
And so it's not, you did this wrong. It's how can we work together to do this better?
Mm-hmm.
That's funny. Our team works that exact same way. It's, we try to learn from it instead of making an issue out of it. So it always helps to come out of concern and come out and make it growth based. So.
Which that kind of keeps the conflict from even happening, right?
I think it's key too and our team is always very good about that, is taking responsibility. I mean, if you drop the ball on something, take responsibility for it. If you're trying to make excuses over excuses to explain why something happened, it doesn't always go well.
Yeah, does everybody on the team own their behavior, or are they victims?
I have that's always been a trait of mine, is I've kind of definitely owned it, but especially since being on this team, it's been so kind of ingrained that because we have our fail forward calls on Fridays, you make a mistake, you learn from it, you share it. So everyone kind of learns how you address that mistake and how you move on from it. But it's interesting when you're dealing with an agent on the other side who does not have that mentality. And that's when it's kind of difficult, because you're like, just own it. let's accept what happened and move on. Obviously I say that inside, I don't express that, but yeah.
Who's had conflict with their market center? You know, as we're submitting green sheets and they're not right and our commissions aren't coming right, like who's had conflicts with their market center?
You can probably see the whole Waldner Winters team kind of
Like no one
wow.
wants to raise their hand.
Haley, you ought to speak to that for us. You deal with more of it.
Yeah, it's often, but I think part of it stems from, at least on my end, of not having that personal relationship that we are outside of our market center. We have a separate location. So you can kind of forget the face behind the email. So we've started to, between the MCA and I, we've had like frequent phone calls. We're texting each other all the time. Like, it's not just work-based. We're actually like trying to get to know each other personally. So it's not like us versus them mentality. It's, we all want to succeed together. It's just, how's the best way to do that?
Yeah, Haley, you're so right. It's hard to get upset with somebody when you're friends with them. Like when you create that relationship with them. Yeah.
And it's easy to forget that there isn't a face to that person. There's an actual person behind all the words that you're saying, or, you know, behind that screen. It's almost like that whole social media effect too. When you are behind a screen doing behind the scenes work all day, you don't necessarily always get to talk to people and hear their voice. It's through emails, and interpretation of emails can be taken in many different ways.
It's been the last 2 years too, with everybody working remotely. It's been even more challenging because we're kind of at a loss to know if ALTAs and commission checks are getting to the market center, and because everything is so remote.
I think it's hard too, because sometimes text is hard to decipher. So a lot of times when we are emotionally charged and we're reading an email or a text message from somebody, a lot of times we can put our own feelings into it, and that may not be what that person was trying to convey to us. So we kind of have a rule here that we just pick up the phone and we talk. And that usually clears up a lot of issues.
Yeah, that's so key.
I like that. Does anyone else have a standard for their communication?
So it's interesting. We reached out to our agents and asked for their preferred method of communication. You know, some agents are like, oh, text me all the time. Other agents are like, well, email me first. If I don't respond, then text me and then call me. And then other agents are like, just call me, like get me on the phone. So we literally have a cheat sheet of how kind of our agents work best. But 9 out of 10 times you end up calling to kind of get that, to just kind of make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah, it's funny because we really honed in on that too, because we sent them like my dog keeps barking, I'm so sorry. Honed in on, look, what is your preferred method? But if we need to get in touch with you, like now, like it's a topic or an issue that's come up, what do we do? Do you want us to text us? Do you want us to call? So we have it color coded. It's kind of cool. On our cheat sheets, like, okay, this is my preferred method, but if you needed me in an emergency, this is what you need to do. So it's worked pretty well.
And we've learned never to leave voicemails because none of them listen to them.
What's the hardest conflict you guys have had to work through? Like when you think back, What's the one that sticks out in your head that you're like, yeah, that was a hard one? Or I would have handled it differently.
I mean, I'm sure we all have. Back in my TC days, I had a crazy Sarah story with a client actually of ours. She was our listing. I don't know much. I could have handled it differently, but you're going to run across some crazy people. And again, you always, it's like, you got to make them, they're our clients. They're going to be always right. That was a big learning curve for me. That was like in 2018, 17 or 18 when that happened. But yeah, for me, it was getting to a solution, present the facts. It's their choice. Great. We can, take it off the market, terminate, and you're going to continue to pay, your utilities and your mortgage, or just let's close Friday and, be done and accept the appraisal that came in $2,000 low, and let's go. Just again, present the facts, zero emotion. And it was all, emotion for them. But for me, yeah, just being very matter of fact. That was a big learning curve after that transaction. Took me a while, multiple tears, cried back in the day, but I learned a lot from it. I'm sure we've all had that story or something similar.
So our team had a really big issue with actually one of our fellow admin team who is no longer on our team. But it was a very difficult few months, and it really just impacted the culture of the admin team, which then impacted the culture of the team. There was just, this person had a very different work ethic and a very different outlook on what the truth was. And that really posed a difficult few months from our team. And I think that I don't think that we'll be in that position again, because I don't think that we would hire someone like that again. However, personally, I don't think I would let it go so long. It would be like, okay, this is not the right fit. It's impacting our whole culture. We need to reassess, whatever that means. But I would definitely bring up the issues to the team lead much sooner. I was wondering if Michelle or Joanne or Jennifer were going to jump in there, but I thought I've got to bring that one up. It was a big one.
Are we talking about Erin? She was actually training me, and I think after like a month of training, I wasn't ready to do anything yet because I wasn't being trained. So I was new to, Keller Williams. I didn't know what to do. Nick Waldner and Blair, an agent, sat down with me one day, and they're like, we're going to hire more people because we need more people on the team, and we need you to train so-and-so. And I was just like, this person hasn't been training me. I don't know what to do. And there were definitely tears shed on my end. And Nick finally, he looked at me square in the eye, and he's like, if you're going to make it in real estate, you have to learn to put the emotions down and don't take it personal. And it's like, I believe Hannah had said, you need to just give people the facts to bring the emotion down. And so I learned that early on. And then I also learned to also confide in the admin staff, Michelle and Peggy, they're tenured there, and talk to them because I had kept it in for so long on my end. So it was definitely a learning experience because, going new and being new somewhere, you don't really know what's going on, especially when you're in a real estate. So it's definitely interesting, very interesting time.
I'll share one of my learning experiences. So I tend to, my natural personality is to get really direct, right? No problem taking the emotion out, but I get short and direct, and you know exactly like what outcome I'm looking for. And that doesn't always work. Sometimes honey works way better than, right? And that was my learning experience was, hey, before you go down this really direct, hard road, you know, try to sugarcoat it a little bit, add a little honey in there.
I mean, back on what Paula said, it's like the mirror and matching. You know, I have a title agent and he is a one-word answer kind of guy, which I love. You know, I'll ask a question, it's yes or no. You know, there's no fluff, there's no signature either. And then there's some that you have to put like, good morning, happy Monday, you know, and really fluff it. So I think it's mirror and matching our clients, you know, and we use the DISC test, you know, DISC, and on all of our paperwork, I've got next to their name, you know, abbreviations, and we circle them, you know, what type are our clients. So I think too, knowing who you're talking to, what's your audience, to be able to talk to them and respond the same type of way. Because you don't want to talk to a high D with all this high I type personality. That's not going to go over too well. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Hannah, because when you're under stress, right, which is conflict, when you're under stress, that's when your main personality trait comes out. So you're right, if you're a high D and you're upset about something, you don't want to hear a big, long story. That's just going to make you more angry.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then especially in these type of moments, what the topic is today, knowing what, you know, who your audience is and who you're talking to and what type of personality style to communicate to them in is key. And even our teammates, we go over that every Christmas, our Christmas end of the year. We go over our KPIs again, talk about our traits, you know, talk about how we're optimistic and assertive and all these things, and then just review back over the DISC. So it's a reminder of how to communicate the different personality styles just on our team. They know to me, you don't have to fluff up anything, just get straight to the point. Some other girls, you got to beat around the bush for a little while and really soften it to tell them that, you know, you're not hitting your numbers this month and you're not going to make the money you are planning to. So, yeah.
I think probably also taking a beat and not going with your first reaction before you send out an email is probably preferable. I said that, you know, I spend a lot of time retyping emails to get just that right tone and not go with my first reaction of what the heck.
Yeah.
It's funny because Joanne is so good at that with me, because it's like, you know, we'll bounce stuff off each other, and she's like, well, just write it out and then save it in your drafts and then come back to it in a little bit, and then, you know, see if you can reword it. But it works.
Peggy's my go-to as well. I'm like, Peggy, this is what the seller said. I want to tell him this, that, and this. And she's like, you will be fired. Do this, that, and that instead. I'm like, okay, does this sound better? She's like, that's absolutely 100% better. So definitely, Joanne.
Yeah, I always say that too, that it's not necessarily it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. So two different things.
I think another key thing that I've learned over time too is acknowledging where people are. Like if you have a really upset buyer or seller on the phone, like acknowledging their feelings and not just glossing over them. Because they just want to be heard, right? And then it's so much easier once they're heard to move them towards a solution.
And knowing the context before you make contact with them, right? It's not every sale is a super happy transaction. And so, you know, saying, wow, congratulations on the sale of your home and it's a divorce, you know, like that right there, you completely broke trust with that client.
That's so true. And Jennifer and I are on the pre-listing side, so we're contacting sellers, and you know, we just have a process with job forms where we're just asking the agents, you know, is there anything we need to know? So yeah, you know, I'm dealing with one where the wife has severe dementia. And so you're going to just contact him and please just, you know, don't ask to speak with her or things like that. Just having that communication so that we can't kind of make those mistakes is so important.
Yeah, that's how to avoid creating conflict.
Oh gosh, I know the last thing you want to do is call the agent and let them know that you've just created conflict. I feel like I had that once last year. I don't remember the situation, but I think it was one of these where I didn't know a piece of information. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it'll come back to me. But then the seller just kind of lost a little bit of confidence in me because he was like, why wouldn't you know that? I was like, So as soon as we got off the phone, I called the agent.
Pass the baton is so important.
I think that's why too, with me and Peggy on the pre-list side, we're always a little more sensitive with sellers because like Peggy said, she's dealing with someone that has dementia. I'm dealing with a client that her mother had passed away and they're both were on the deed of the house. So, you know, but we work, like Peggy said, with jot forms. So I knew that going into the file. And so when I reached out to the client, you know, you remember those things, you know, and a lot of times those clients are sweet, but there's some that are, I always find that some of the most difficult clients are the ones that are just suffering the most, like they're battling things on their own. So I just come from that standpoint, you know, just trying to understand where they're coming from, like you guys had mentioned. And that makes it a lot easier.
That's so important, Jennifer. And sometimes we have to take the time to understand, right? Give them the space to explain or dig in a little bit to understand.
Do any of y'all like script practice with your team to like go through the, what's the squares, like the quadrants? Like,
Yeah, the 4 quadrants. So
yes.
I know I'm trying a total blank. Michelle?
I'm not quite sure actually.
What? It's in my office. It's like the present to, I don't know, future. Anyways,
Yeah.
Through the, I mean, pretty much it's pain versus pleasure
present.
script kind of thing. And yeah, you work them through you know, a scenario type of thing and getting them to the finish line, you know, but working them through down the line through that quadrant. There's a great graph somewhere. I think it probably came from Bold, but do y'all script practice like with your team to be able to make any of these phone calls or like how to, I mean, because I'm sure we've all been yelled at, cussed at type of thing. Like, how do you handle that? Do y'all script practice with the team? Like to be able to handle some of those phone calls?
Are you guys in the same office so you can hear each other?
We are, our team is, yeah. We've got our admin office and then right across the hall or just one doorway is our agents. And so we do quite a bit. I was telling her actually this morning after a phone call, man, I need to script practice going over some things. Or tie downs. I was doing high up, you know, upswings and needed to be tie downs and lower tones, not high tones.
I like that, script practicing through the conflict resolution. That I think that's probably something that a lot of people skip over when they do script practice. But I'm going to say something that's a little probably off of what everyone else might think. But when I was in that role, I mean, our team didn't necessarily believe that the client was always right? We had to lead the clients in the transaction from start to finish. And so educating them was a huge part of it. Doesn't mean that they're always right. And so they always need to be heard. and then we need to set the expectations and lead them the right way. However, if there was a client that was hostile, screaming at you, or even any party to the transaction, we would bring it to the team lead immediately. And that client, if it was a client, would, if they can't resolve it in that moment, the agent resolving it, then that client was fired. So there was like a no tolerance to the way that, you know, the outside world treated our staff, because having your staff's back is a huge part of it.
And how often did you have to fire a client, Michelle?
I mean, we have fired like some actually mental people, but it's probably only happened about 2 or 3 times while I was in that role. And normally the agent would be able to take care of it. But because they have that relationship from the start, they are the ones that brought in that client. If they, you know, disrespect the staff, it needs to be brought to the, you know, the person that actually has that relationship to take care of it.
Yeah. So as you say that, it sounds like it's really like, oh my gosh, yet it happens so rarely. It just gives the staff the peace of mind that their backs are going to be had. And I think all of us have 2 or 3 clients over time that get fired anyway. What about people not doing their jobs, right? Like you have your closer at your title company that's not getting you what they need, or you have a vendor that's not doing what they promised to do. Like, how do you guys handle that? Because I'm sure that comes into your world a lot. Somebody else not doing their job and you have to step in. Lenders.
I would love to know the answer to that, because half the battle a lot of times with us is that we don't get copied on things. It's like we're not kept in the loop and we don't know things. And it's frustrating when you reach out, but you're not included in it. So you know, that in itself is causes a conflict because, you know, that's part of my job. I'm here to help with the transaction, but if you're not going to include me in the transaction, and it can be the whole process too. Sometimes, I mean, I've had a transaction where the other agent or even lender title refuses to put me on the email, even though, you know, the agent's like, please copy Michelle Lopez on this, you know, and no, the whole time, not once. I'd love to know how you can combat that.
I think for me, not so much lenders, but builders are awful. In Austin, Texas, we have a ton of new builds. So I'm constantly keeping in touch with them. A lifesaver for me has been Boomerang. However, I think that Google or Gmail has since implemented kind of a Boomerang thing in there already. So you should be able to do this. But if I have a builder that never responds to me, I will, trying to see if it's on there. I have Boomerang on there, but basically you just flag it and it will bring it back to your inbox. You set it up for the amount of time frame that you want. So if you want to reply in 4 days, I'll get an email, hey, this person hasn't responded to you in the last 4 days. Do you want to follow up with them? So I can just constantly keep bugging the heck out of them. That's really the only thing that I've found that's helpful. And that's just keeping myself in check to keep following up with them.
I originally came from the building industry, and I have to tell you, they complain all the time that the realtors aren't involved in the process, and yet they don't respond to the realtors. It's like, it's so frustrating.
I know a big one on that as well is I've just learned to always CC our clients on the emails, because sometimes I would reach out like, hey, can you give me an update? Well, if they know the clients are on there, their customer service is going to be a lot better than if it's just me. So by copying them, it does help.
That's actually a very good idea. That didn't occur to me.
So what do you guys do when a lender goes unresponsive and you need to find out what's going on and you can't get any response?
Because sometimes I'll try to work around them to see kind of where I can go in sort of a back door, maybe go through title and see if they've had any contact with the lender. Because sometimes they can give me information that, or I've found out that they're having the same type of communication issue. Yeah.
So I used to be on the TC side and now on the pre-listing side. But one of the things that I feel that used to happen was the vendors, whether it was the lender, title, wouldn't be responsive to me. And if I went to the agent and said, hey, this was kind of before they had their automated systems. Hey, they're not really being responsive to me. And they're like, oh, this is my buddy. Yeah, no, I'll reach out to him. But just kind of reminding the agent that, you know, if your buddy doesn't reach out to me, I can't really support you in the way that I'm supposed to be. So can you tell your buddy to make sure that he copies me on things? I know it's silly, but like you guys can think of, you know, a couple of buddy-buddy relationships like that kind of come back to bite us.
And I also think it depends on if it's a preferred vendor versus just a run-of-the-mill, you're on the listing side, you don't have a choice, or whatever side, you don't have a choice of who the lender is. If it's a preferred vendor, that's a conversation that needs to happen outside of the transaction to make sure that our people are getting what they need and they're providing the top value that they can to be able to partner with us.
So Haley, how do you have that conversation?
That's a good question. I have not had that conversation. More so recently, the conversation I've had is actually some of our lenders coming to me saying, like, we want to be better. Do you have another email address instead of us emailing Hannah when they should be emailing Michelle? We've like grouped the emails together or whatever, but it is usually a conversation that's come through our Rainmaker.
You don't want the Rainmaker involved.
I don't. That is a good point.
Well, they don't want the Rainmaker involved. If they're getting a call from Nick, they know that it's not good.
Too true.
Yeah, Nick will just complicate things anyway, so.
I feel like the TC job is so much conflict resolution. Like I feel like we're doing it all day long, and I don't even know if we as TCs realize that's what we're doing. But we do it every day in some capacity. So whether you guys realize it or not, you're really good at it.
Why your Rainmaker's not doing TC work.
Any other questions around this? Do you guys, I mean, here's your mastermind group, right? These are all your like-minded people. Are you struggling with anything you want to bring to the group?
I don't know if you guys touched on this yet or not. I had to jump off for a second, but like the admin and agent relationship, especially having like, if you have, obviously like not all agents are going to be in the office 24/7 to build that relationship with them, but like how people handle that type of conflict resolution.
Are you able to give us an example?
That's a good question. I don't know, I think that sometimes during a transaction, things can get to be a little stressful, obviously, one way or the other. And if you have not built that like personal relationship with the agent because of like lack of face-to-face contact, like how do you build that, I guess, relationship if you don't have that ability? So you don't have that like us versus them mentality.
That's a really great point. Like you have a new agent on the team, right? You haven't built a relationship with, or with COVID, like you have an agent who came on during COVID that you haven't had a chance to build a relationship with, yet you're in the middle of a transaction and it's going south. What would you guys do?
Virtual
'cause I
happy
think-
hour.
Yeah. Yeah, but honestly, I think we kind of will then kind of jump on a Skype and be like, okay, let's talk this through. What can we do? How do I go from here? And we, it tends to be because if you don't have that relationship with the person, you don't necessarily want your first kind of big conversation, non-transaction to be, hey, this isn't working for me. Your communication style isn't working for me. So that can be a little awkward. And I don't know, have we had that situation? We may have.
Been on the team for a long time. I feel like we have, but like, has anybody else also like implemented some type of like communication style, like survey or something? Like, I know we did that a while ago for like our team, which seemed to be helpful for some people, but obviously like communication styles can like change over time. But has anybody done that? Like, or like utilize DISC personality when you're like have like agent A's profile is their strong D, so I know how to interact with them. Because I don't think we've done that side of it yet.
I hear it because you had jumped off and we kind of touched on that
Sorry.
same topic.
All right, ignore me.
Yeah, I mean, I'll kind of say what I said earlier. We use the DISC to, mirror and match with our clients' coworkers. And we have built a after transaction survey for our agents on our team to fill out. So how did it go through home inspection? How did it go through appraisal? So it's like a few prompting questions. And then what's some highs and lows, pros and cons throughout the transaction. And that kind of helps us fill in gaps of the checklist to see where we need to improve. And then just like a thing today, we had
I think I did see that.
we brought a buyer to a listing and the listing agent closed out in the MLS under our buyer's agent's name, Sarah, and not our Rainmakers, Carrie. So like we had to email Carmel's or our MLS and have them change that. It's like, there's one thing. Okay, all we need to do, let's add 2 more emails towards the end of the transaction to that listing agent saying, just a reminder, you're going to close out this listing under Carrie. So like just little things like that, setting the expectation up. So then later down the road, we don't have to take 2 minutes to type an email out to the MLS to correct that. So just little things like that, we try to catch through that survey, and then just good communication between the team. In our morning huddles and then our team meetings, we go over processes. What are things can we clean up? What can we do? We're a pretty open book team, very straightforward.
Do you get a good response for those
surveys? Kind of. A few agents are great, some are not. Your high D type personality agents, they're not going to do them.
Right.
But we know where, something fell through the cracks. It's pretty, we've already had that conversation. So.
Yeah, I can imagine. It sounds like your team's similar to ours. I mean, it's pretty transparent. Things are pretty transparent. So.
Very, very. So.
Do you ever do it the opposite where you grade the agents, right? You get back to the agents on what you guys experienced on your end?
Yeah, I mean, in our one-on-ones, or I'll go to the Rainmaker, and kind of there's 1 or 2 agents on our team that are their transactions are a lot harder, or they do them a lot different, and they don't leverage us as much, and they hold on to too much. Then some just dump them everything on us. And we love that actually, to take full control other than trying to figure out what in the world is going on with these transactions. So we have a DOS coach through MAPS, through MAPS program. So I communicate with her and kind of help go around it a little bit. Yeah, and then we do talk about the processes and just like, hey, here's our checklist. This is what the agents do. This is what the admin are doing for you throughout the process. Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. So we just kind of keep going over at least every other month. We'll go through the process with them.
So you're going through the TC process with the DOS coach?
Yes, I have sent her our checklist of who does what.
Okay, I need to do that. I need to do that. That's a great idea.
Because I figured out that, one of the girls was complaining that she's doing all of this. And, then the DOS coach is like, Hannah, what are y'all doing? Or like, the admin team. And I was like, here's our checklist. This is what we are trying to do. So then it was like the back end support where, the agents love to not lead generate and to find the busy work and do our job and, micromanage us sometimes. So that's kind of really helped come around full circle with her helping. Hey, you don't need to be making these phone calls. The TC, read your emails in the afternoon of what's been done on that file. That's where it's just like, let it go focus on the new business. And so that's where that's really the communication through coaches or your rainmaker to help pull that all together instead of me looking like the bad guy saying like, hey, you're not doing this, let me take it. So yeah. For us, that's worked well within the last year at least.
So we have about 10 minutes left. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts on this topic? Okay, if we don't, I need all of your help in figuring out what our topic for next month is going to be.
Do you mind sharing what the last couple of months have been, just so that we kind of have an
You're
idea?
gonna really challenge me now.
Oh,
Hold
I'm
on,
sorry. I'm sorry.
Let me pull up my list. So we've covered goal setting, we've covered automation, we've covered the client experience, and deepening relationships with Sphere and vendors.
What about like post-transaction communication?
Ooh, I like that one.
We done referrals through I just added that tag for 2022, referrals from the transaction. Whoever's knocking that out of the park would love to pick their brain.
Any other thoughts? Because
what about like your culture, like your team culture? And speaking of which, like, where is everyone working out of? Like, what offices? Just kind of curious.
like whether they're home or in an office, or more of like where they're located.
I guess where you work out of, like, are we in different states or? Okay.
Yeah.
So I know like myself, Peggy, Michelle, Joanne, and Haley are all with Nick in Maryland, DC area, and Rose as well. But what about everybody else? There's someone from Austin. Okay. And does everyone's admin work remotely, or are we going to the office?
Hannah, you look like you're at the office.
Where's Haley?
Yeah, there's a few of us that come into the office and a few that still work from home, especially with the numbers rising this past week or two.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say I have more people working in the office than working from home at this point, yet with the new outbreak, I know that we've been going back and forth a lot.
Yeah, we've had more agents going back into the office, but most of us are remote, other than Haley, who goes back and forth.
What Facebook group is this through, like MAPS operations Facebook group?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
It is,
Okay.
because I want to post on there. I've got to grow my agent
Thank you so much.
partners lead generation. So I'd love to add like everybody to command, send y'all our postcards and get our agent referral email newsletters, but then we can all share. I'll put that in start a conversation, and everybody can put their phone number, email, and address, so we can all build our database, send referrals back and forth.
Love
There you
it.
go. Because we know who sends the referrals, it's not the agents. There Haley is working on her topic of referrals from the transaction. She just raised the bar a little bit.
Mhm.
Okay, so I have 3 topics: referrals from the transaction, post-transaction communication, and then culture. Which we can do all 3, yet let's pick one for next month. What do you think you guys would be the most interested in?
I think referrals would be great just because we have family reunion coming up. And that's a time where a lot of agents get together, and I don't know, are any of you guys going to family reunion? One? Two? Okay. It just might be a good topic because typically every time I go, that's my one goal, is to bring a referral. So just expanding that conversation and how to do it in the transactions and everything would be great.
Okay, we all good with that one? All right, that's what we'll run with. Well, thank you, everybody, for showing up today and participating.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Take care.
You as well.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.